It's safe to say that a lot of the White Lotus characters are a little bit jaded.
Maybe what I really want is to be one of these Asian girls.
I dreamt that I was on the top of this beautiful mountain range in Asia.
Oh, that's cool.
And I had a cyanide pill.
Did you guys see the sky this morning? It was so gorgeous.
Oh.
Yeah, it was.
So I thought it'd be interesting to rank these characters, but with a little twist. In today's video, we'll be ranking every single White Lotus character based on their mental well-being. And I know what some of you out there might be thinking.
Oh my god, Malia, why would you rank somebody based on their mental well-being? That is so insensitive. There's actually people out there struggling with their mental health.
Listen, I hear you, but this is a show purely based on satire, and these are fictional characters. So if you get offended, simply click off the video.
You can pack your things and leave. There's the door.
Now that they're all gone, let's get to ranking. I thought I could do a brief introduction into the tiers that I came up with. First one is you are thriving, so you're just doing really great, taking care of yourself, doing what you need to do to get by. Next one is you're doing okay but lacking some self-awareness. So this could be not addressing the fact that you're doing something wrong or not addressing your wealth and privilege. Next one is you're coping and need to do better. This goes into coping with certain substances or people or things. You know, you need to have better habits and learn to deal with your problems in a better, healthier way. This next tier is you're struggling and need to change. So this is the tier right before you become a train wreck, but you're not quite there yet. But if you don't change, then you'll quickly spiral and have your whole life crash and burn. And the very last one being respectfully go seek out a therapist. Obviously, this is the worst one, and to the point where you need some intervention in your life in order for you to get your shit together. For Corn Chai, I would put him in you're doing okay but lacking some self-awareness. He was a good guy. His whole romance with Belinda was nice to see because it was unexpected. I didn't think that they were gonna get together, but I think his thinking was pretty unrealistic in the way that he made it seem as if him and Belinda were gonna come together to make this business happen and just live happily ever after. In some ways, he is very similar to Belinda in season 1 because he had all of these sort of expectations into the way in which his life could have changed with the help of Belinda, but he needs to accept the fact that Belinda really didn't owe him anything. They barely knew each other. They knew each other for a week, so it's not like they were gonna end up together. For Lonnie, I think I would also put her in you're okay but lacking some self-awareness. I get it, sis needed that check, but if you're 9 months pregnant, do you really want to take that risk as to taking the job and then, you know, worst case scenario, having your water break in the middle of your shift? She needed to take her ass home. I can understand her financial situation and the fact that she probably felt as if she needed to take this job, but that phone call with her husband, her partner, I mean, he was telling her straight up that she was crazy for taking this job because it made no sense. Next up, we have Giuseppe, who was a season 2 piano player at the hotel. I'm gonna have to put him in you're struggling and need to change, mainly because he was such a sleazebag. He made it seem as if he was gonna get Mia in touch with all of these people who he knew in the music industry and have her be able to have her foot in the door. And no, he was lying. He was lying all along, and he basically just lied in order to get into her bands. And that's not right. And he shouldn't have done that. Next up, we have Dylan, who was from season 1. I would put him in you're coping and need to do better, mainly because of the way in which he kind of went along with Arman's whole descent without as much as, you know, thinking it through and realizing that you shouldn't fraternize with your hotel manager who clearly isn't doing very well. I think he was coping mainly with drug and alcohol abuse because he could have said, no, it's okay. I don't want to do all that. Alexi from season 3, I would also put him in you are struggling and need to change, mainly because he is a criminal and I don't think he should involve himself in that sort of lifestyle because I feel like one day it will catch up to him. I think there's better options out there and he could try a little harder to not have to resort to this sort of life where he's basically stealing and robbing. Plus, he was a two-timer with that woman, especially. That whole situation where the other woman caught him and Lori being intimate. He's a lie and a cheater. Next up, we have Jack from season 2. I would definitely put him in You Are Struggling and Need to Change. I think the same thing goes with him and Alexi, because they are two people who just decided to be in this life of crime and live it. With Jack, he's a prisoner of his own making. I mean, he's definitely living his life. He has all the perks of being able to travel and just see all sorts of things and just live life without so much as a concern. But when you really look into his life, it's a bit of a sad existence. The way that he has his whole life set up, he's pretty much indirectly involved in the murder of an innocent woman who didn't deserve to die, i.e. Tanya, and he lied to Portia and basically lured her in order to separate her and Tanya. Then we have Arman, arguably one of the most iconic characters. At first, I thought his character was a little bit disingenuous, especially with the way that he was interacting with the more wealthier clients, but I guess I can understand where he's coming from, because after working a customer service job for a while, it can get a little bit tiresome. So his crash out was maybe a little bit valid. And I think it was just all that pent up energy that caused him to do what he did in Shane's room. I would put him in respectfully go seek out a therapist. Realistically, he might not even have the time to seek out a therapist because he was busy running that hotel. You could tell that he did his job really well, but yeah, you need to seek out a therapist because he had his whole descent into madness. We have Albie. I would definitely put him in You're Doing Okay but lacking some self-awareness, mainly because of his whole storyline with Lucia. He really made it seem as if that they were going to have a happy ending, but they weren't. I feel like he didn't really comprehend the true nature of her job and made it seem as if she was this innocent little dove that needed rescuing, and here he was having the ultimate savior complex. And I think he just walked into the situation that he ended up in at the very end, where he was basically scammed and hoodwinked by Lucia. And I know he meant well, but he could have had a little bit more critical thinking when it came to a situation like this, which I feel like he should have had, mainly because he's a college student who went to Harvard? I forgot the college, but it was some Ivy League or UC school, so should have used his noggin and had some more critical thinking skills as to how to approach the situation. For Kitty, I would put her in You're Doing Okay but lacking some self-awareness. I feel like she's so accustomed to the way in which she's lived that she can't comprehend a whole nother life. It mainly had to do with the way that she was interacting with Rachel and put her down for the way in which she wanted to pursue her journalist career again. I can see why she might want to sway Rachel in this way, because this is all that she knew as a wife, which was basically attending these charities and pooling all of her money there and resources as well, because if you're in that great of a financial situation, you can afford to just host these parties and events. But Rachel isn't like her. They're two completely different people, and she should have more awareness as to the fact that not everybody will want her life. Just because her lifestyle fits for her, it doesn't mean that it's going to fit for everybody else. Next up is Kai. I would put him in You're Doing Okay but lacking some self-awareness, mainly because he went into that plan with Paula very blindly. I can understand why he might have wanted to commit that crime out of desperation, but he shouldn't have trusted Paula as much as he should have. He's probably serving jail time right now. Alessio, I would also put him in You Are Struggling and Need to Change. For those of you who might not remember him, he was Tanya's side piece in season 2, and I think he was gonna ultimately be the one to, Tanya when he brought her back to Palermo. And he needs to change, because to be a cold-blooded killer and kill a woman you don't really know, that's dark. Kate and her whole friend group had a lot of fake tendencies about them. I would put her in You're Doing Okay but lacking some self-awareness. She did grow on me despite the fact that she is more Republican leaning and a little bit more conservative than her two friends, I think she was the most level-headed out of all of them, because that night when they were all getting drunk, she was being a good sport about it all. I would put her in this category mainly because she, like her other friends, have some fake tendencies about them, talking behind each other's backs and putting up this front. I feel like she doesn't say things as directly and beats around the bush and fails to see the way that she's also enabling toxic friend group between the three women. We have Jim. Easily I would put him in respectfully go seek out a therapist, because I don't understand his way of thinking about all this. He literally could have just spilled to Rick that he actually was his father, but he was making some unnecessary drama that shouldn't have happened in the first place, and he paid the price for it. Next up is Mark. I would also put him in you're doing okay but lacking some self-awareness, mainly because of the way he doesn't really address his privilege and making it seem as if he's the bad guy in all this. I can understand him because white cis men mainly are villainized, which I can get makes you feel bad, but I mean, the world has been set up in a way that the world favors these men and that it's easy for them to get certain things handed to them. And I think he's the type of person that ultimately demands respect without so much as giving it. And he just rubs me as a type of person that comes off as a little bit entitled and that the world owes him a lot of things, when in fact it really doesn't. As for Mia, very easy. She is thriving. Honestly, I loved Mia's character because ultimately all she wanted to do was sing, and she wasn't gonna have anything stand in her way of doing that. She ultimately did have to come to the realization that she did have to sleep with Giuseppe in order to get the connection she wanted, and was ultimately led on. But I think she did get the upper hand in all this when she made the conscious decision to sleep with Valentina, because that's what ultimately got her favorability and her job as the pianist in the hotel. Mia had the passion and the grit for the job, and you could tell that she really loved singing, and that's all she wanted to do. And we love that for her. For Quinn, I would put him in You Are Thriving, mainly because that ending was so surprising. He started to get more of a better outlook on life and realized that there were better things in life as opposed to just being on your screen 24/7. He got a really good ending, and I am happy for him. Now, as for Tanya, I would put her in Respectfully Go Seek Out a Therapist, because as much as we all love Tanya and she was definitely a fan favorite, she did have her fair share of problems, which mainly stemmed from her childhood, as it was revealed she never had the best relationship with either one of her parents, which of course skewed her perception of love and intimacy. So it was a bit harder for her to be completely open to people. She should seek out a therapist to help resolve her problems and the way in which she sees the world. Her character is truly missed. For Vlad, another one of Alexi's and Valentine's friend, I would also put him in You Are Struggling and Need to Change. I'm starting to see a little bit of a pattern here for this tier, mainly having to do with male criminals, it looks like. But same thing goes for him. I do empathize with him because he's a refugee from Russia and is in this country where he's not really familiar with, but he can do better for himself and doesn't have to lead that life of crime. Next up, we have Miss Daphne. I would definitely put her in You're Coping and Need to Do Better, because that whole little game that she does with her and Cameron is a bit unhealthy, and there's a lot of things that remain unsaid in the relationship because they don't choose to vocalize any of it. She's making it seem as if their life is just so great and that they're so happy, when in reality there's a lot of cracks in their relationship that remain really unaddressed, especially when she lured out Ethan. That was her way of coping with the fact that Cameron cheated yet again. And it seems to be that she has this pattern of coping with Cameron's infidelities by also having her own little infidelities as her own little act of revenge. She's coping through the pain. Next up, we have Mook, or Miss Lalisa. I was so happy when I found out that Lisa, the artist and pop star herself, was going to be in the season. I would put her in You Are Thriving. I loved her little dance sequence too. She's so pretty, and she had a lot of involvement with Guy Talk's development. She was mainly there to serve as a character for him and his growth. For her, she really tried pushing Guy Talk to question his religion and the way that he approached life, which I liked about her character. I mean, she got exactly what she wanted and then some. Next up is Lucia, and I think it goes without saying that she is definitely thriving. She was definitely the ultimate winner of season 2 because she got her money. Honestly, I like to think that she had this whole plan set in motion of scamming the DeGrasso men before they came, because I think she's more smarter than she makes herself out to be. Next up, we have Lori. This might be a bit of a hot take, but I think she's thriving. I think out of all of the women in her friend group, she's the one that's most honest about how bad her life is and is willing to be open about that and just to let it all out like a can of worms. And despite the fact that she is a divorcee and she might not be where she wants to be in life and that she's not the wealthiest in comparison to Kate and Jacqueline, I think she is okay with that and has come to the realization that, as she said, as long as she's at the table, then she's content. She seems like the type of person that doesn't really need that much money to satisfy herself and probably just needs the company of her friends and loved ones to make her life a little bit more worth living. Even though the first episode made it seem as if she was a very sad character, by the end, she had a really good development. For Paula, I would put her in You're Doing Okay but lacking some self-awareness, because I feel like she made it seem as if the Mossbacher family were all villainous and bad. They're just a really wealthy family that is a little bit tone deaf to the discourse. Her whole plan was just a mess and she didn't think it through. She made it seem as if she was going to save Kai and get him out of the pit that he's in, but ultimately ended up destroying his life. Now as for Piper, I would put her in You Are Thriving, mainly because despite the fact that she realized that the monastery ultimately wasn't for her, she's at a better peace of mind, as we can see from the ending scene with her on the boat. She's come to the realization as to the type of person she is and how she's more like her mom than she thought. It was also revealed that there was a scene cut out with her and Zion where they got intimate, and it was supposed to appear before the very last scene when they were leaving for the boat, and you could tell that that did wonders for her. So I think she's thriving. Now as for Rachel, who had probably one of the more tragic endings for all of the characters, I would put her in You're Coping and Need to Do Better. I say this mainly because of the way that she got with Shane. I feel like she was just so allured by his life and his presence that she walked into this marriage without as so much giving a thought about what the rest of her life might have looked like. And it's only until they're on their honeymoon and she talks with him and Kitty and finally realizes the way in which her life is going to look like for the next 10, 20, 30 years. In that aspect, she was coping with the fact that she was having a pretty mediocre journalist career and probably didn't have any other option besides getting with Shane, because he does live this life of comfort and that's something that he has been able to offer her. She's definitely a prisoner of her own making, but at least she's a prisoner with a hell of a lot of perks. Now as for Chelsea, I would put her in You're Coping and Need to Do Better, mainly because I think she was coping with the fact that she really believed that Rick was going to change for the better. Chelsea seems like the type of person that is a ride or die, literally, and she ultimately suffered the consequences. For Saxon, he definitely changed to be a much better person. I would put him in You Are Thriving. Saxon had his own spiritual development in large part because of Chelsea and her influence, and I like the fact that they changed his character to be a little bit more conscious of who he is as a person and how he presents himself. He's also at a much better state of mind by the end, as we can see the way in which he's really delving into trying to become a more spiritually tuned in type of person. As for Portia, I would put her in doing okay but lacking some awareness, mainly because I think she was just so hellbent on living out her ultimate Italian fantasy that it ended up being a nightmare for her. She ultimately got her awakening in the very end when she realizes that Jack and his uncle Quentin weren't actually related and that there was some suspicious activity going on with them. Yeah, she could have handled her situation a little bit better, but I'll have to give her the benefit of the doubt because she was just looking for some fun and adventure and got caught up in some really dark stuff. Now, as for Chloe, I think she's the definition of ignorance is bliss because she likely doesn't know Greg's past. I mean, obviously she doesn't because she thinks his name is Gary. I mean, I think she's thriving. She's a beautiful woman who has definitely taken advantage of that by being with a man like Gary. I think she's just on vacation mode 24/7 and she's definitely living up her life, which is great for her. As for Amarita, I would also put her in You Are Thriving because she seems like the type of person that genuinely loves what she's doing and helps a lot of people because of it. She definitely helped in Rick's growth a lot in trying to address a lot of his trauma. She was just trying her best to be there for him. Next up is Greg, jail time, but we don't have that, so respectfully go seek out a therapist. He had us fooled. At first, it's made it seem as if he's like this innocent man who so happened to stumble upon this room that he thought was his, but it actually wasn't. And that's how he meets Tanya and how they get together. But in season 2, that's completely flipped and he turns out being Tanya's ultimate demise. And I wish that something bad happened to him in season 3, but I'm glad that at least he had some hand in helping Belinda out because that's ultimately what Tanya wanted for her. Also, that little tidbit about his sexual attraction for being caught was so weird. I don't know how they came up with that stuff. Jacqueline, I would put her in You Were Struggling and Need to Change because her character pissed me off, mainly because of the way that she was egging on Lori to get with Valentine and encouraging her and just pushing her to, hook up with him. All for it to be revealed that she was ultimately going to hook up with him in the end anyways. So she's the definition of a bad friend. And I think she's also struggling with the way that she's viewing herself and as a woman of her age, likely obsessed with this eternal youth and wanting to be perceived a certain way, as we can see with the way that she got super offended being sent over to the resort where a bunch of elderly were, which isn't really a problem. She just wasn't having it. And I think she's the type of person too that feeds off of the attention of young men. Next up, we have Nicole from season 1. I would put her in You're Doing Okay but lacking some self-awareness, mainly because of the comments that she made throughout the season. One being how hard it is for a lot of young white men to find jobs, and also her interaction with Rachel was very telling of how she views herself and how she got to the position that she is now, because she is a very high up person in the corporate world, and she villainized Rachel in the way that she interpreted her rise into the position that she's in because of the optics of it all. And I can understand that she likely had to work really hard, especially in a male dominated industry, but she too fails to see the way in which luck also played a role in her receiving that role. I mean, if anything, she did benefit from the controversy that was going on at the company and the way that the optics made it look, in the way that they were going to uplift Nicole as this woman who is going to be a woman in a high position. So she's lacking some awareness in that end. Lachlan needs to seek therapy because I don't know what made him think that what he was doing to his own brother was okay. He had me fooled because I thought he was going to be innocent character, but is anyone really innocent in the White Lotus? I guess not. He's a very questionable character. For Tim, I would put him in You're Struggling and Need to Change. His whole arc was basically just wanting to kill himself, which I could understand, but his way of thinking where he just realized that he needed to take his family with him, wild. He did not need to be doing all of that. As for Sritala, I would put her in You're Doing Okay, but lacking some self-awareness. Her initial introduction made it seem as if she was this all-powerful woman in Thailand, which she is. But they painted her out to be a little bit more naive, and I feel like she should have been a little bit more suspicious of Rick and Frank. As for Bert, I think I would also put him in You're Doing Okay, but lacking some self-awareness because of the comments he has against women. And I think he's just an old cat stuck in his ways and isn't willing to see the world in a new progressive way, especially with the way that women are treated and talked about. He's definitely the type of grandpa that would offend a lot of people because of the way that he grew up. For Fabian, who is likely the weakest hotel managers throughout all the seasons, I would put him in You're Doing Okay, but lacking some self-awareness. The way in which he approached his interaction with Belinda was just so bad. He was just so quick to defend Greg and talked about how we don't talk about hotel guests in that way when Greg isn't even a hotel guest in the first place. Sure, he probably visits the hotel during the daytime to take advantage of their bar and pool, but he has his own house and likely doesn't even stay for the night at the hotel. So I think Fabian was not a good character. I think it was just so funny the way he had so much anxiety built up over his performance during dinner time and ultimately ended up not even being seen, showing the insignificance of his performance. So that was pretty funny writing. Shane, I would also put in You're Doing Okay, but lacking some self-awareness. He is an entitled brat, to put it simply, especially with his interactions with Armand. If I was Armand and I was having to deal with a Shane, oh my god, that would be my 13th reason. Shane seems like the type of person that takes a problem and just makes it 10 times more worse than it actually is. He did pay for the pineapple sweet, but he could have approached it in a much better way and didn't have to act so entitled about it. He is lacking a lot of self-awareness in that department in the way that he doesn't see the way that he's coming across in his interactions with others, especially Armand. For Frank, I would also put him in You Are Thriving. I thought his character was going to delve back into that life of hedonism, but the last scene revealed that he ultimately ended up going back to his roots and took the religious approach to his life. Frank was a really interesting character, mainly because of his monologue and the way that he revealed how he got into this sort of identity crisis, which I think was a very interesting take and something that I've personally never seen before talked about in a show as big as The White Lotus. So I think he's thriving. For Cameron, I would put him in You Are Struggling and Need to Change. His character, to put it frankly, is crazy. There's a lot of things that remain swept under the rug when it comes to his friendship with Ethan. Also, he's a serial cheater, and that obviously has affected Daphne to the point where she feels the need to also cheat in order to cope. And I think it's just a bad situation all around for him and Daphne, because I think it was hinted Daphne and Cameron's oldest son isn't actually Cameron's and is the son of Daphne's personal trainer. I think he was the main instigator in the group's dynamic in season 2 and was the cause for a lot of the problems that they all had. Next up, we have Dominic. I think he is also struggling and needs to change. I think he's made a lot of mistakes in his life and really needs to change and reconsider the way in which he approaches sex. For Victoria, she's very clearly thriving. It's literally just her and her lorazepam against the world. She's clearly the type of person that makes no apologies for her wealth, and I think wants to instill those same principles onto Piper. Her character too did serve as the comedic relief for the season because that was something that died with Tanya in season 2. Okay, next up we have guy talk. I think I would put guy talk in you're doing okay but lacking some self-awareness, because I think for majority of the season he was just making so many mistakes that it didn't make sense for him to even have his job in the first place, because quite honestly I think he just needed to grow a pair, because he wasn't going about the things as seriously as he should have been. That whole sequence where he was trying to talk to Tim and try to get the gun from him, I feel like he should have been more direct, but coming to the realization that he is a more religious person and takes this more peaceful approach when he handles things. But I mean, come on, he's a guard in a hotel. You need to be a little bit more direct and confrontational when it comes to a job like that. You can't afford to make mistakes like he did. Olivia too would also be in You're Doing Okay but lacking some self-awareness, because she makes it out to be that she's this person that stands by the people and hates authority and hates the system. But I mean, growing up in her own life of wealth and privilege, she doesn't know how much the struggle is real. For Quentin, jail time. Just kidding. Go seek out a therapist, because he really was trying to kill Tanya, and not much has to be said other than he is a very evil character and I wish nothing but the worst for him. For Zion, I mean, he's thriving. Clearly, a lot of people didn't like his acting because they thought it was cringe, but honestly, I thought he was hilarious. I mean, he is trying to represent the typical 21-year-old in college who also happens to be a business major, and I think he killed his role. I mean, he ended up negotiating with Greg to get more money for him and his mom, so he's very much clearly thriving. For Rick, I would definitely put him in respectfully go seek out a therapist. He did get that in the form of Amarita, but he was just so consumed by revenge and had tunnel vision and couldn't really see anything other than his hatred for the man that supposedly killed his father, which ended up being his father. And if he waited just a little bit longer, he could have talked to Amarita and couldn't have killed our girl Chelsea. For Ethan, I would put him in You're Coping and Need to Do Better, because of the way that he approached ultimately ending up cheating with Harper and doing something with Daphne, all as a way to get their spark back. He's definitely coping with the fact that he's not as good of a guy as he might have thought he was in the very beginning. As for Belinda, she's definitely thriving. I love the way that they ended off her story, because she was done really dirty in season 1 and she ultimately got her happy ending by getting a very generous donation in order to fund her business. Harper was definitely coping with the fact that her marriage was very sexless, and in order to satisfy that hunger that she's been wanting for a while, she decided to find that in Cameron. As for Valentine, I would put him in You Are Struggling and Need to Change, mainly because he's likely the one that orchestrated that whole robbery in the first place. So he's the whole mastermind of the whole operation. And it's the fact that he felt like he needed to rob the establishment that he was working out in the first place. Reveals a lot about his character. Now, as for Isabella, I would put her in You Are Thriving. I think she was such a sweet character, and she was very kind to Valentina and was even willing to celebrate her birthday with her, and just seems like a great person all around. Hello, Editing Mal here. So it looks as if I lost the footage for these characters. So let's first go over Valentina. She's clearly thriving. At first, she was a bit of a stuck-up character, and I think we all generally didn't like her. But I think she was just sexually frustrated. And with the help of Mia, she was able to find out that she was actually worthy of having this love and connection. And I think her story is all about sexual exploration, and she was able to get a taste of that. As for Rocco, I think he's also clearly very thriving. He seems like he's very content with his life and his job. Plus, he's a newly engaged man to Isabella. So there's a lot to be happy about that. And last but not least, for Salvatore, I would put him in You're Doing Okay but lacking some self-awareness, because I think he was making Isabella really uncomfortable and didn't really realize just how he was clearly flirting with her, which he shouldn't have, because I feel like he's way older than her. But it looks like that is all of the rankings for all of the White Lotus characters. Alright, and that is it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, cool cats.